We're really excited to be welcomed in by Chris Gordy, now again Locked On SEC podcast. Chris, have you picked out what karaoke song you're going to be singing at Gabriel's this year?
Shaggy is my go-to,
Okay.
but I've been working on some other great 2000s hits, like some Third Eye Blind, some Matchbox 20. So I think it depends how many White Claws in we get.
Tommy, do you have a recommendation for Chris? Now, he's one of the more talented singers that we have in our radio role in our group. Do you have a recommendation for him?
Probably none y'all would actually listen to, because probably it doesn't sound like George Strait or Johnny Cash is going to make the list. So probably none of my recommendations would have made rehearsal the last few months. So Ring of Fire, although Ring of Fire is always a crowd favorite.
There you go.
Good old Win said SEC was kind enough to give us some Dave & Buster's gift cards, so some way we'll make our way over there. But let's make our way into some football conversation. And you got LSU today, and that's kind of where you cover all the SEC, but LSU's where you've kind of buttered your bread the last couple of years. Chris, we have an idea under us, and you let us know if we're way off base, if we're right. I think LSU has a chance to be the widest disparity team is worth. I think they could finish second in the West, and I think they could finish fifth. Where do you fall on what LSU is going to be in 2021?
What I look at is last year, guys, the defense was an anomaly. That was historically bad. That's as bad as they've ever been. And a big reason was it was Bo Pelini not willing to adapt, not willing to adjust. And I think they've, the new staff they brought in, Durante Jones is their new DC. He's come in with the mindset that, look, we're gonna put our players in the best position. Like last year, they had Derek Stingley, they had Eli Ricks, they had Jabril Cox, who ended up getting drafted by the Cowboys. They had all these different guys, and they were terrible. You can't convince me that the players were bad. The scheme was bad, and so I look at last year as an anomaly. I think they're going to bounce back this year. So many people are so quick to write off Coach O for some reason, and I don't know, maybe it's because of his failed years at Ole Miss many moons ago. He obviously was successful at USC, taking over as the interim coach, and ever since he's taken over at LSU, he's been nothing but successful. Yet for some reason, last year, nobody's willing to write that off an anomaly. They're wanting to say that's who he really is. And I think that's not true, because you look at what they did, obviously the year before, undefeated season, national championship, but prior to that, they went in and beat UCF. Remember when they were undefeated in the Fiesta Bowl? That was a huge win for them. He's had nothing but successful seasons, and look at his record against top 10 opponents. It's better than anybody in the SEC, and I laugh when I look at some of these coaching rankings that they do in the offseason, and people are putting Dan Mullen ahead of Orgeron. It's a joke. What has Dan Mullen won? He just got to the SEC title game for the first time in his career as a head coach. And is anybody expecting them to be back this year? So it's a joke. I think Orgeron he gets a little bit disrespect, and I think they get back to at least 9, maybe 10 wins this year.
Yeah, which would be more than enough. But, Chris, how much of this is going to be on-the-field performance, and how much of the off-the-field items that have made headlines are going to follow Coach Orgeron this year?
Yeah, I talked to a couple people on the program there, and it's not a distraction at all to the team. It's not a distraction to Coach O. What's happening with a lot of stuff behind the scenes there is happening up in the offices, the administration offices, and they're trying to do a good job of cleaning house and bringing in some new people and getting rid of whatever toxic stuff was going on there. Is Coach O's name popped up in a couple of stories? Yes, but I don't think he cares about it or pays much attention to it, and I certainly don't think the team does. So I think that's more for us in the media to kind of say, oh, look what's going on, but I don't think it's going to affect them at all in the field.
You brought up Dan Mullen a little bit, and I think you go back to last year with Kyle Trask and kind of the season they had. You think back, the LSU ended up winning that game because of the infamous shoe toss, but I'm kind of like you. I don't expect Emory Jones to have Kyle Trask-like numbers and them to get back to an SEC championship. So what is Florida going to look like this year, especially in the East, which I think it's as wide open it's been in quite some time for second place, not necessarily for first?
I think one of the biggest offseason mistakes of anybody in the SEC was Dan Mullen keeping Todd Grantham. It's an absolute joke. Look, I know they had opt-outs in the bowl game, but you got embarrassed by Oklahoma in that bowl game. It was ugly. And, yeah, they had turnovers and all that. But the defense was god-awful down the stretch of the season. You couldn't stop a true freshman in Max Johnson against LSU. So I think that's going to play itself out. I think they've got some good people on defense, obviously, and we're going to see a couple of them this week. But, man, I really think they made a big mistake there. They should have went out there and hired a new DC and brought in a new scheme. But I think that may be the death knell of, Dan Mullen maybe wins 8 games this year, and suddenly he's, they're talking hot seat on him because he kept his buddy around another year.
Yeah. Chris, you're in Houston. You are closest to the Texas A&M program, a program that Arkansas can't seem to get around for the better part of the last decade. A lot of expectations this year with Jimbo Fisher's program. What's the big offseason talking point? Do they really believe in College Station, as Jimbo said at a rubber chicken luncheon, that they think they can beat Alabama? Is this the year the Aggies finally turn the corner in the West?
Well, they better, is my answer. I mean, always the bridesmaid, never the bride. Like, I was one of the people saying last year I didn't think A&M deserved to be in the playoff, and I know a lot of people were making the case for them, but I kept looking at what they did all year, and their resume wasn't all that impressive. And, oh, by the way, you got stomped by Alabama. It's put up or shut up time now for Jimbo and A&M. Like, you're going to be at home, I think it's week 6, at home, hosting Alabama in a rocking Kyle Field. It is going to be sold out. It's going to be a monster crowd. If you can't get it done this year, then I don't know if you're ever going to do it.
Yeah, this upcoming year, and it comes back to what the position always, or the game always comes back to, is the quarterback position. You got a young guy in Bryce Young that's going to be taking over for the Crimson Tide, and then it looks like we were talking to Owen Buchanan last night. He said Texags. He said the competition in A&M's closer than they originally thought it was going to be. And is it Calzada? How do you say that?
Zach Calzada.
Yeah. Calzada with him and Haynes King. I think a lot of people just expected Haynes King to run away with that job, but not just in the spring game, but that's what Jimbo Fisher has said. So with the quarterback shaking out, I mean, they have NFL talent all over that football team, but it's going to come back for Jimbo, his quarterback, and what that looks like for the Aggies to beat the Crimson Tide.
Yeah, I mean, they're dominant up front on offensive and defensive line. They got some studs on that defense. They actually have a good secondary, and I don't know when the last time I said that about Texas A&M, because they've always seemed to struggle there, but offensively, the backfield, Isaiah Spiller, A-Shane, and I. Smith, obviously they use him more as a wide receiver, but all three of those guys are studs. Jalen Weidemeyer, a stud at tight end. Who can throw the football? You're not going to beat Alabama running the football. We know this. We've seen this in years past. LSU tried it 1,000,000 times with Les Miles. It doesn't work. You've got to be able to throw the football to beat them. And, again, it's how quickly. Really, here's the question for that game. Who settles in quicker at quarterback? Is it Bryce Young at Alabama, or is it Haynes King at A&M?
Yeah. So if A&M is good enough to beat Alabama there in that Week 6 ball game, are they good enough to beat everyone else in the West and everyone else on their schedule? Because I don't see Alabama losing a couple of other ball games. I guess theoretically you could each lose one for Alabama to A&M, and then end up in a tie that A&M would have the tiebreaker on. But can they run the rest of the table or lose no more than one and be the Western Division champion if they can beat Alabama?
Yeah, that's the key. I mean, you win the head-to-head, it buys you one, right? So the non-conference, they were obviously the Aggies. They were a little snake bit the last 2 years, having to play Clemson on their schedule. They're praising God that they got them off the schedule now. But then they get Colorado up in Denver, a nice little neutral field game. They should be able to take care of them. But the rest of their non-conference is a joke. I mean, when you look at Kent State, and they're going to roll through the non-conference. The question is there a conference game that could trip them up? And I think, like I said, if they win that head-to-head game with Alabama, who cares if you slip one up somewhere else? It won't matter, because you'll have the head-to-head, and you're going to Atlanta.
Yeah, and they do have to go to LSU and Baton Rouge to close down the season. I think that's going to, if they somehow, some way beat Alabama, that's going to be a really intriguing game. For
Never won there.
For it. Have they really not?
Since they've been in the SEC.
Since they've been in the SEC. That's an intriguing stat that I didn't know this morning, but that's really the game. So you have a perspective, Chris, for being in Houston, close to College Station, and with LSU ties. Is the SEC, we know they're trying to push that LSU A&M rivalry. Has it picked up at all the last couple of years? I know we had the 7 overtime or 8 overtime game 2 years ago, but have you gotten a sense with Jimbo with ties to LSU and just kind of the SEC pushing that? Has that gotten some weight behind it at all these last couple of years?
It has, and it wasn't for years. I mean, LSU owned that rivalry ever since A&M came in. Even with Johnny Manziel, LSU beat him up every single year that he was there. But, yeah, it kind of started in that 2018 season. Remember, LSU's defensive coordinator had went over there, and then they win the 7 overtime game. LSU curb stopped them the next year in Tiger Stadium with Joe Burrow 50-7. And then this last year, they beat them again. So 2 out of the last 3 A&M's won. I think you could say we officially have a rivalry now between LSU and A&M.
Well, Chris, we appreciate you stopping by our table. I know we'll see each other from time to time this week. Enjoy the rest of SEC Media Days, and enjoy hearing from Dan Mullen, Ed Ogeron, and Shane Beamer today.
Yeah, man, go Hogs.
That's a good way to end an interview here on ESPN Arkansas.